Hello, everybody. Welcome to another session of Me Programming Daily. Thanks for joining me again today. Let's switch to the code view. Today, I'll be focusing on trying to render actions here and here as the two paths leading out of this question. This is something that we started yesterday, and while doing so, I detected that this should ideally be a question. So let's start today's session by fixing this. Let's change this string named fork content into a question, because question should be rightfully there. And let's continue from there. So I hope you have your coffee or tea or whatever you choose, and let's get coding. The weather where I live is absolutely miserable today. The whole day is dark and gloomy. I'm happy to be here with my coffee and coding. Let's see what breaks. Oh, this is interesting, because I cannot make it a question. I have to make it a skewer block. I don't think this will even compile. Yes. So for now, let's make this a skewer block, because question is a skewer block. And that will give me some food for thought, how to reorganize those types to represent drakon elements a bit better. So now, as we are building this, this can no longer be called a fork content. I think this is a question now. Sorry to be skipping like that. Now, let's see how fork is getting rendered. Render fork, render question. I need to do some serious thinking about those types, because I don't have a good feeling about representing drakon reality correctly with these types. But that will come. For now, I just want to focus on something that I started a couple of weeks ago, and this is to completely rethink how I approach the process of laying out those icons on a 2D plane. We're taking a massive detour now. So just as a refresher, the whole project used to look more mature, more sophisticated, and we came back to this only to experiment with types that more resemble the drakon white paper and the layout engine that is more suited to the original design of drakon. This sort of works, but it's more of an imitation that an actual drakon set of rules. So anyway, but we'll get there. Yeah, this is not needed. So changing the type from string to question should not change anything because we're defaulting to a question anyway while rendering. Yeah, it doesn't change anything. And now, what should be more interesting is the process of us rendering the action of a fork. So let's move these functions that draw rectangles and hexes somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And render fork, we'll get these two just for practice. And now we need to pattern match on the origin. So this is left. I want to see the left-hand side rendered first. Left, perfect. Right, this is amazing. Where did we pattern match on? The origin, is that it? Okay. See, so these types are also very misleading because we're rendering a fork. Sorry, we're providing an instance of a fork. Sorry, we are providing an instance of renderer for a fork type, and then we treat this as the fork value. I think I have to do some homework with these types, but this is all to be sorted. What I care mostly about is that we represent drakon elements a little bit more faithfully when it comes to the white paper, at least. So the question gets the origin. Let's call it an F. Or just fork. And these will remain like that. Let's see how we can construct a new point out of those. So instead of origin, just for now, we're going to have xy, xy. That should compile, but it should not produce correct results. Okay, so just as a test, let's shift this y by minus 0, 1. This one also. And since it's right, let's also manipulate the x, shifting it right by 0.1. It shouldn't produce correct results, but it should steer us forward a little bit in the right direction. So at least it should give us a hint of what the finished fork would look like. And it sort of does. We just need to separate all three shapes a little bit better. Perfect. So now, let's shift the first action, because this is where we're starting the rendering process, by the x is not shifting, but y needs to be shifted by the height of the question. So I'm expecting now the left-hand side action to be shifted down correctly and to appear here in this section. Okay, and it does appear here. And the right-hand side, for now, let's render in a very similar way. And this will be width in units of a question. Now, this is to be changed because we're not interested in the width of the question. We're interested in the width of this whole section on the left-hand side that is either a valent point or a list of skewer blocks. And this is where it will start getting interesting. So now we should expect a vanilla correct fork without any connections. And yet, oh, sorry, that's x plus. Perfect. Now, so the first thing we need to do is these blocks cannot be so close together. So let's insert one block of distance between them. But maybe we can do this later. So now, this is starting well, but we are rendering an action here. We shouldn't, because the left-hand side is definitely not going to be an action. It can either be a valent point or skewer blocks. So let's implement a function for this. Render left. That gets this type as an input, and it returns diagram B. Not necessarily left, it will do this. So it returns an empty thing. Sure, we can make these changes. Anything else? No. And here. So now nothing's changing yet in the rendered diagram, but what I would love to do now is to replace this whole line with something else. But not yet. Let's see if I got the syntax right. I think I got it right now. So let's do this. GHC is complaining about L and R, but not about Q, so that's good. Now, instead of rendering the left-hand side like this, we're going to use render L. And if this had a more mature dedicated type, we wouldn't have to use the helper function. We could provide an instance of class type renderer to this type, and we can simply write render. So I believe I used to have a comment here. Yes. Okay. So if we render now, R is still not used, but L is not being complained about. So now I'm expecting this to be empty. Perfect. All right, so here we go. We shouldn't really be embedding the type name and function name, but I'm going to replace this type with something more mature anyway. So now I can do render either R. Sorry. And now it's complaining about Y and X, but that's fine. And now I'm expecting both of these to disappear. Perfect. We're making the diagram worse, but we're also making it better, I believe. So let's go back here and, okay. And now we also need an origin. So this we can reduce. So here, let's do, oh, we don't need this anymore. So instead of calling it like this, let's render like that with this new origin. And now I'm expecting to see what we've just removed. So we don't have an instance for render. Oh, this can be easily changed. That should work. It complains that but you know what? Maybe we should provide at least the bounding box of a valent point anyway. Just for now. I need to format this. Now origin matters. This is not needed. And valent point still needs to be rendered. I mean, it has physical dimensions. No. Okay, so now GHC complains about skewer blocks. So we can remove this. render valent point works. So now what happens if we run it? Those points should be restored, the action. One valent point, one valent point. Yes. So let's say on the left-hand side, we have an action. Oh. Skewer diagram block action. Oh, so that's right. Nope. Right. Okay. Okay, let's see what's happening here. Of course. So that's just an action. So now the left-hand side should be rendered as an action just by coincidence. But if we have two actions, they're just politely going to get ignored, and instead just one action will be rendered. So now, where we have the process of rendering skewer blocks, we need to start actually rendering skewer blocks. And I believe we already have a method to do that. Blocks. So this I feel we should leave for the next session. But for this session, we should at least correctly calculate the height of the fork. And the height of the fork is the height of the longest of its arms, left or right. So it should be something like this. So height is not necessarily 2. Yeah, we could really use a dedicated type for this because we need to write these helper functions. So let's do height in units prime. Valent point, and here the situation will be slightly more complicated. It will be a sum skewer blocks. I think that should be all right. So this, for now, let's just use an L. And height in units prime. Oh, here we will need the fork. Ignore. Ignore. Oh. So that would be just height in units L. Fork is not needed. So for now, let's not worry about this. So what I'm expecting is, oh, this is already incorrect. We know the height should be a bit more. All right, so let's see what happened here. We're calling it with 2 actions. Now with 3, so the total height should increase. And it does. Oh yeah, I made a mistake because we're not counting the question and calculating the height. But look at this result. So even though we're not rendering these actions, the fork already knows that it should be a little bit higher. So it reserves some space for the bounding box. Okay, this is nice. I like this. So the new layout algorithm is I'm starting to see it shaping up. There won't be much of laying out going on, I think. It's just combining pieces together and making sure that their bounding boxes are of the right size. So let's just quickly fix this helper function. Height prime. And the height of a fork is the height of a question. Plus the height of left. So now it should be 13. The height, yeah, perfect. Even better. So we're preparing our diagram to contain 3 actions. 1, 2, 3. Let's check the time. Yeah, we should really be wrapping up. So probably a task for the next session is going to be to provide a better type for this, so that we can give it an instance of renderer, and we can give it, so that, we can render and we can determine its width and its height. And from that, we'll move on to rendering these actual shapes in relation to each other. Okay, so even though that visually it doesn't look like much, I'm pretty happy with the progress today, and it sets us up pretty nicely for the next session. Right, so thanks very much for your patience today, and thanks for joining me today. I hope to see you in the next one, and have a fantastic day, everyone.